Well, welcome to Prog Talk on Bongo Long Music. My name is Frank Long, also known as Bongo Long. With me today, I have Mark Ptak. I have brother Henry Ptak. Got Alan Benjamin and Graeg Katona. And if you know anything, these guys are from possibly the greatest, most fantastic progressive rock band ever known in this universe. Well, this little universe right here. Advent.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you,
today we challenged ourselves with albums that are probably not in a prog collector's collection, but should be. So why don't we start with Mark over there? What's your first one?
Let's see. First one I'm going to go with, which is a fairly new release. I think it's 2022. I don't see the date right off the top here, but maybe Alan can tell me. Oh, no, sorry. It's technically said it's 2021. So still fairly recent. But this is a project by a friend of the band's, Dan Bornmark. His project is Green Asphalt.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard of that one yet, Frank, or not, but
I've heard of it. I may have even, YouTubed it or something, but
yeah, really great stuff in here. It's a great collection of tunes that are pretty all over the place, like funky, jazzy, jazz rock fusion kind of stuff. The composition is high rate. Musicianship is fantastic, and the whole artwork and everything, the whole package of the album came out really nice. It's included with it is lyric sheet and nice little insert that's got some nice photo work on the inside. Dan's two lovely daughters are on this as well, and they sing like angels. Really, they're angelic voices for sure. I think their names are Singina and Yordis. Wonderful musical family. The Barnmarks. They have I don't know. Alan is his mother's a musician too, right, Dan?
Yeah. She's actually, I think, a pretty well-known musician in Sweden who I think specializes in children's music, and last I saw was still performing. And by the way, you took one of mine, but that's okay. So this is the green vinyl version, but it's okay. I have some alternates, so I'm good to go. But yeah.
Hopefully I don't knock out some of your alternates either. But
okay, well, I'm prepared. I got all kinds of stuff.
Well, as long as you got to pick a new alternate, why don't you go ahead, Alan?
Okay, well, what I did is, I selected 5, and I have a bunch of alternates too, and I'm going to try to go in chronological order because I'm obsessive and I had to come up with some kind of order. So I'm going to start back with a release from 1976 that I discovered through helping a friend sell some of his vinyl collection a while back, and I was so excited when I put the needle down on it that I called my good friend Ken Watson to talk to him about it. I was playing him some of the music over the phone, just like dropping the needle everywhere, and we were just like, man, this is incredible. It's a fusion band from Barcelona from 1976 called Música Urbana.
Wow.
And I got really lucky because the bass player, there's a phenomenal bass player, and I ended up playing with Paco de Lucia and Chick Corea. And I actually saw him perform with Chick Corea, and I got him to autograph my Música Urbana CD. So it's their self-titled debut. Their second album is really great too. There's a remastered version I have as well. It's kind of like an authentic version of Chick Corea's My Spanish Heart, minus the female vocals, but with a little bit of Canterbury and RIO thrown in. And the keyboardist, Juan Amargo, is an amazing composer and composes modern classical music too. So it's very highly recommended.
Cool.
Right
I'm gonna hopefully I'll have a list of all these that I'll put in the comments and maybe some links to listen.
Yeah, I can assemble a list of what I put together and send it to you after so that you have it.
Cool.
Thanks.
Greg.
Okay.
Casa.
I think I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to do a different starter just because of what Alan picked. And that's going to be going back to the 70s too. I think this may be a year later. I was originally going to go with, we're talking here about Return to Forever. So I was originally going to go with the iconic Where Have I Known You Before, but a prog guy is really going to love Romantic Warrior. Can I get that in frame a little bit better? So Romantic Warrior.
It's almost perfection.
Yeah, grab one of mine.
76, maybe somewhere in there. Brilliant composition. So, Frank, you heard the album, right? So unbelievable stuff. Any prog person is going to love, especially the closer, Duel of the Jester and the Tyrant. The opening of that, this is the Chick Corea's biggest ensemble of keyboards. When he got to this album, he sort of did the Rick Wakeman thing. Tons of keyboards on it, great guitar. Al Di Meola was still there. The rhythm section the same from the previous two albums. Fantastic. Just bigger, more bombastic. Critics hated it. It was their biggest selling album.
Best sounding album too.
The critic of the day said something about it reminds me of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but it's the worst of both worlds. So it got some really bad reviews from the press at the time, but it's a phenomenal album. Highly recommended.
I love that. I love that album.
They're gonna love it.
The first one, Hymn from the Seventh Galaxy, is.
Yeah. I only mentioned Where Have I Known You Before because of Al Di Meola kind of came in and that became the classic, lineup. But yeah, great album too. Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, of course.
Well, yeah, that one was groundbreaking, along with Ma Vishnu.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome stuff.
Yep.
All right, Henry.
I'm gonna blow the three out of the water. I'm gonna go in a completely different direction. Mark will probably get a chuckle out of this one because he's the guy who really actually turned me on to these guys. Spilt Milk by Jellyfish. Okay, reason why. Greg and I were just having a discussion kind of going back and forth recently. And I was commenting on a couple of bands that we'd recommended, basically pretty much. I don't think it's fair to refer to Jellyfish as power pop. That's the way they would basically categorize themselves. I think their stuff is proggier than any power pop I've ever heard. The arrangements are absolutely stunning. They're different one from the next. They're as distinctive. It's obvious that when you listen to them track for track, there's a concept to it. They don't really admit to a concept on the album, but I think it's basically pretty much sort of about, they're just growing up in California, basically. I mean, it starts out pretty much with a stunning sort of kind of like a lullaby from like a parent basically to a kid going to bed. And then the rest of the album is essentially basically pretty much about having to do with just what you would probably, what kinds of things you would have been basically experiencing in California during that particular time when they were coming up. I mean, crushes on I guess probably I don't know if this is exactly probably the best way to go. I'd say I'd probably start with perhaps maybe Hush, which is basically the opening piece from it, which is all vocals. The vocals are stunning. And it goes into sort of this song called Joining a Fan Club, which sounds like all the things that you would expect to hear basically with regards to either Queen or the Beatles. At that particular point, I was hooked already because to me, even though it was a California band, they sounded very much Anglophile to me, and that's one of the things that really kind of like caught my ear. So I'd say, and the way that they ended, it's like kind of like almost like their version of the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. Basically, it sounds to me like what it would have sounded like if that was if they had done that song. Last song on the album is called, it was a Brighter Day.
Yeah, it's like a circus march almost.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of like collages and stuff like that in there. Stuff kind of like coming in pretty much from different parts of the stereo spectrum. I mean, you have stuff that's really far off, and then all of a sudden you have something that's right in your face. Just the actual mix is stunning. There's other stuff on there. I just can't, there's it's difficult for me to be able to find one particular song on it that's a standout for me. But I said probably the starters is probably the one. I guess probably Hush and Joining the Fan Club. I'm forced to go with my maybe the one of my choices towards the end because two of the guys already basically picked stuff that I was going to recommend. But I'll get even with Graeg because I'm going to go back to Chick Corea also, and probably for the No Mystery album. But we can do that later. That's it.
Well, you just gave it away, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted to also add
No mystery
no
now.
mystery, no mystery.
I just give him to you.
I want to add one other thing to the Jellyfish. That's a nice pick too. Is that the great Lyle Workman plays guitar on there too?
Right. Yep.
Who
Does
we
that-
know,
exactly one of my picks.
and Lyle's
Yeah,
actually a bit of an Advent fan, by the way, too.
Who is?
Lyle Workman.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's he said some kind things about us. Yeah, the thing is basically pretty much the thing that I was mentioning to Graeg. We just went back and forth about this recently. About I made a recommendation. I said the funny thing about the California bands is they're always better than what they're aiming at. They're always trying to be pop, but they find their musicianship getting in the way because they're just really good. Their sense of what they consider to be pop is so in a lot of ways really sophisticated. They don't go where you expect them to go. Their harmonies and their singing is almost always first rate. I know where all the tenors went. We can't find them over here on the East Coast. They're all out in California. But the tenor vocalists and stuff like that, every single band out there just seems to have great singers. And it just in general, basically, pretty much it seems like they sell themselves short by categorizing themselves as power pop, to my ears at least anyway, because they always seem to be going someplace better. And for that reason, they wind up basically limiting their fan base to people who actually listen to them and understand what they're doing, which is sometimes basically kind of like I think sometimes when you're listening to pop stuff, you're expecting it to be kind of predictable, and as I said, to have the usual things that a good pop single would have. To me, they're trying to be pop, but they fail. Because I think they're better than what they're shooting at. That's it, just basically pretty much my opinion.
That's funny. Okay, so back in the 70s, I had a friend that was a huge vinyl collector. A lot of 45s back in those days. We used to play Drop the Needle, where somebody would pick out of his thing and drop the needle for like 4 or 5 seconds, and we'd have to guess the song. It was a lot of fun. So he worked in a record store. I think it was the Warehouse. And I was in there one day looking around, and he knew my preferences. And he says, "Hey, here's an album I think you'd like." And he even stuck a sale price on it. And it was Seventh Wave. And the album is Things to Come. It's only 2 guys, but I remember looking on the back, and they had piano, electric piano, clarinet, arc, Moog, EMS synthesizers, mellotron, glockenspiel, chimes, and vocals, drums, congas, bongos, sleigh bells, claves, xylophone, and vibraphone. And I just said, I got to listen to this. Some of it is a little throwaway. The vocals are not strong. It's not like you run away screaming. But there's a couple of great, there's a good sound. There's an honest, they're being honest about what they're trying to create. And I think that too many times bands will try to make something that, oh, they're gonna love this. I like the ones, say like Gentle Giant, that were honest about what they wanted to do. They just wanted to do something, and they did do a follow-up called Sci-Fi at PSI hyphen phi, and it was not as good. But there you go, Seventh Wave. That was 1975. You're gonna find a lot of mine are from that period.
Me too.
That's a good reminder to get the album out again. I haven't heard it in years. I think I have the old vinyl, but I checked I have it on CD as well. But
I was
haven't
checking
heard
to
it.
see if I mean, all these things I obviously had on vinyl, but I gave up on vinyl after having to unload them every once in a while, and just I said okay. But I did keep a few. Okay, Mark.
Okay, I guess my next pick is an album that I should have in my collection, but I don't right now. But I hope to rectify that shortly, because I went back and listened to it again on Spotify, and I kept saying to myself, you know, I really got to pick this up because this is really fantastic stuff. And I apologize, Alan, if I take another one of your picks, but but I'm just going to hold it up on my phone so you can see the picture. But it's Mus Urbana. And I apologize if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. And the name of the album is, I think it's from last year, 2023, I think, right?
I believe so.
It's called Visa from Inaura, which I think is, which translated means view from the inner ear or something like that, right?
Yeah, because it's actually it's really based on Matz's tinnitus, but it's actually the right way to say it. What Amy told me recently, not tinnitus, it's tinnitus. And so that's sort of the overarching theme of the album.
Right, yeah. And as a matter of fact, he's, Mats is, you know, as people know, he's blind, but he's also developed this tinnitus, which he's had for a little while. And it's a noise that he said that he hears in his head constantly, and it's not just like a high pitched thing, because I heard well, this album is actually produced also by Dan Bornmark, so it was done at his studios, I guess, or recorded mostly over there, and he and Mats had to come up with, interestingly enough, they tried to mimic the sound that Mats was hearing in his ear that was, you know, that's been troubling him for the past few years. And, you know, since Mats has perfect pitch, he's trying to, you know, dictate, okay, it's a little of this, it's a little of that, and it's got this kind of quality to it. There's a big noise and a hum, and you know, it's just a, you know, like a whole mess of different sonic things that they ended up calling like Tinnitus Garden or something like that, right? And they actually recorded it, and I think on some YouTube video you can hear it, but it's, you know, it's just like this really you know, I don't want to say, you know, disturbing, but I mean, if you listen to that for a long period of time, it can be disturbing, and poor Mats has got to deal with that, of course. But you know, he wanted to get this album out, I think because of being, you know, stuck alone at home, you know, during COVID and stuff like that. He had all this stuff in his head that he wanted to just get out, this music he wanted to get out, and you know, and Don helped him get that stuff recorded. Some really fantastic stuff on there. It's jazzy, rocky, fusion stuff, a little Frank Zappa-ish, a little Giant-ish. You know, there's a song on there called Dream Loops, which is probably my favorite cut on there, which features Mike Keneally on guitar, and just really, really wonderful stuff. Mats is such a gifted player and composer. So that's a big one for me, I think. You know.
Cool.
Next.
Mr. Henry.
Back to me, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. I think probably I already kind of let the cat partially out of the bag, so I'm going to go with No Mystery, Chick Corea, also 70s album, basically. I think it was the one that preceded Romantic Warrior, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Just the opening tracks from that are just basically, I mean, immediately, as soon as you put the needle down, you're off and running already with the Day Ride and then Jungle Waterfall. Of course, the title track is fantastic. Some of it, I think, as far as I'm concerned, some of his best playing ever.
There is.
And again with the
amazing
classic
playing.
lineup also, it's that the Demiola, Chick Corea, Stanley Clarke, and Lenny White. That was the original lineup basically that I really fell in love with.
Used to love watching Lenny White. He was such an interesting drummer to watch.
Yeah, him and basically pretty much Billy Cobham. It's I don't know where they get their time from. You know, and Omar Hakim also. Those three are just absolutely incredible. I was recently watching a couple of videos of the iterations of Weather Report after Jaco Pastorius with Hakim on drums. Yikes. That guy's just completely off the charts. Incredible player.
He played with Sting too, I think, right?
Yeah, he did. He played with everybody. Actually, he's actually on the Blue Turtles album, unless I'm mistaken, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the solo album, yeah.
Alan, what you got?
Okay, so for again going in chronological order, there's so many albums by this artist that are worthy of mention. Just sort of like if you were to ask me what my favorite Gentle Giant album is, I would say virtually all of them. Maybe not quite all of them, but virtually all of them. Same thing would be the case here, but I thought I would pick the one that's probably the best introduction to his work. And one of the biggest influences on my own personal like writing and just musical sensibilities is Pekka Salonen Visitation from I think it's 79. Let's see, yeah, 79. So I mean, Peck is somewhat known, and I actually discovered him kind of by accident because there's an album that he did with Mike and Sally Oldfield that was released like 5 or 6 different ways, of which at least 2 or 3 were under Mike Oldfield's name, and that's how I first discovered his music. I end up just going crazy for his stuff, and was fortunate enough to help him out and his band when they came to New York City in 1993 to play a couple of gigs before heading out to South by Southwest. So I was able to help him out and meet him and spend quite a bit of time with him, too. But any of his albums are really phenomenal. Like every one, I would say that if the only one that maybe would be sort of like not quite as interesting to start with would be his soundtrack album, Everyman. But his work is incredible, and this particular album I think is just like a fantastic starting point that you can't go wrong with it. So Visitation by Pekka Salonen, and that's my second pick.
And what's the instrumentation on that, Alan? Can you tell us? Like,
yeah, let me, because I think there's some sax and other stuff on here.
and Pekka's playing what kind of stuff? What's he?
Well, he's a bassist, but he also plays other instruments. Oh, yes, on the back. I'm gonna have to put on my reading glasses.
Sorry.
It's okay. You can see my cheapo reading glasses here. Yeah, there's 2 sax players. Pekka plays piano and bass. He plays actually quite a bit of piano on here. Yeah, there's guitar, 2 sax players on one tune, 1 sax player on some of the others, some percussionist and drummer.
Okay.
How long did they or up to what year did they record, Alan?
Pekka, well, Pekka, I guess his last album I think was Views, and it wasn't that long before he passed away. It's really sad. He died very young. I think he was 56, and it's quite a while ago now. I'm going to say like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I didn't even think about looking at that, and it's just kind of crazy. But
Their last album was probably a year or 2 before that.
Yeah, I think I'll take a look. While it's not my turn, I'll come back with some answers. I don't want to state anything that's incorrect, especially me being so obsessive.
Okay. So we got about 8 minutes. Can you get yours in there, Greg?
Sure, we could do one. I'm gonna hold it up first because this one does not say who the artist is or what the name of the album is. It's just weird graphics.
It
And
looks
this
like an
guy
eye
has
chart.
he's put out so many unbelievable albums, and in fact wins a Grammy Award just about any year that he releases an album. And that guy is Pat Metheny, the fantastic jazz guitar player, with a really obscure, strange album called Imaginary Day. That came out in 1997. Now, a lot of prog people probably got into Pat Metheny early on because by the time he broke in like 77, 78, prog was kind of on its way out and punk was in, and a lot of progressive fans needed somewhere to go because there was less and less good music coming out by the time you hit 1980, right? Unless you went into the jazz era. So a lot of people got into Pat Metheny early on. But this album in particular, if any prog people never caught on to him or didn't know where to dig in because there's 50 albums to go and they don't know where to go, Imaginary Day would be a good starting point. The album actually, it won a Grammy just about, he wins a Grammy every time he puts anything out. So that was expected, but it won a Grammy for one of the tunes. It's called, what was it called? One in particular, the Roots of Coincidence, I think is the name of the cut. And it won Rock Instrumental of the Year. It won a Grammy that year for Rock Instrumental. Pretty strange, but it is kind of like a thrash metal sound. And for Pat Metheny, that was kind of breaking new grounds. But, it's got guitar synth on this album, great arrangements as usual. The one tune called The Heat of the Day will freak out any guitar player no matter what you like, but prog fans in particular. And it also, he debuted his Picasso guitar on that album, and that's a guitar with 42 strings, multiple necks, harkens back to Chris Squire's 3-neck bass, so prog fans that like wacky instruments, that's the one for them, the Picasso guitar. And there's a great track on there that's just the solo Picasso guitar, phenomenal. So
Is Lyle Mays on
that? Pardon?
Is Lyle Mays on that?
Lyle Mays is on there. Yeah, I'm sorry not to mention him. The late, great Lyle Mays, one of the most fantastic jazz keyboardists of all time. Was
Egan on your suit?
Yeah, co-wrote probably 80% of the stuff here, co-written by him. Phenomenal player.
Yeah. His solo stuff is fantastic too.
Yeah, but basically any album of the Pat Metheny band, good to go. But Imaginary Day, prog fans will love it.
I have a piece of trivia on that one too, and I will answer the questions about Pekka because my memory is definitely not what it used to be in terms of the dates. But there is a really cool prog metal band that had a friend of mine in it, actually in Israel, who did a great prog metal cover of Heat of the Day called Heat of the Night. The band's called Key of the Moment. So if you get a chance, and I'll send the link for that too. It's a really great prog metal adaptation of that tune.
Nice. I'd like to hear that.
And just while I've got the floor really quick, I can't believe it's been this long, but Pekka died in 2008, November 27th, 2008. So it's longer ago than it feels. So
when did we see him at Kenny's, Alan? Do you remember what year that was?
1993, March
1993.
Yeah.
And ironically, that's when Spilt Milk came out.
Really? Yeah. Wow. And his last album was Views, as I had mentioned. It was 2001. So it's a few years before. I know he'd gone in this sort of a semi-retirement. It was every time I send him emails and we exchanged, messages. It wasn't that often, but he would talk about playing golf. He got really into playing golf later in life. And
Too much for his
I think the last time I heard from him was right after the September 11th attack. He just wanted to check and make sure we were okay, which is really nice. So
Nice of him.
The multiple neck guitar, Long Beach in the 70s, Long Beach Convention Center, I think it was going to see ELP. And here was this band with this guy with short hair and a double neck guitar. And I just was not interested. A few years later, a drummer buddy of mine when we were at the Naval School of Music tried to get me to listen to this band. It was Marish Orchestra, and I said, "Man, I saw it." And he kept trying to get me to listen to it. Finally, sat me down, and we altered our perspective, and it was like, oh my! It was a huge opening to the fusion world.
Mhm. Frank,
Yeah.
I'm jealous that you got to see that lineup. That's amazing, but unfortunately, you weren't enjoying it.
I could care less. I was there to see Emerson. Who are these guys? They got short hair. Come on. Okay, so my next one is from 1980, and it's I believe it's German or French. The group is called Trilogy, and the album is called what is it? Here it is. Here it is. This is it's pretty much, well, it's instrumental with a couple of keyboard players, a guitar player, bass, and drums. It's really nice music. I wouldn't rate it way up there. The musicianship is not stellar, but it's very enjoyable. It's a good, especially when you want some proggy instrumental music that it's got enough of a quirkiness that it keeps you interested, but you don't have to necessarily listen to, like Return to Forever, You gotta
What's
listen
it
to
like,
this.
Frank? Just out of curiosity, what would you compare it to?
Um, Kind of like ELP or Triumvirate.
I was going to say Triumvirate would be like an obvious choice. Yeah,
Yeah, and not a clone. And this is 1980.
Mhm.
So, but the approach would be like that, you know. But well, Triumvirate is that's a definition of clone. You can
Yeah, I would agree. I'd have to, yeah, it's. I mean, I heard. I said, "This is good." Sounds like ELP, but it's good.
Yeah, I love Spartacus. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
such a great album, and you just go, fine. So what if it sounds exactly like that? But anyway, Trilogy. Here it is, 1980. Good symphonic instrumental stuff. All right, so we're going back to let's go to Henry.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to 6970 for this one.
Woo.
A lot of people didn't know about this band. There's a couple of very fine performances of those guys when they're in their heyday, which is very short, unfortunately. They're part of Tony Stratton Smith's original stable on Charisma. I'd say the very first. I don't have it with me, unfortunately. I lent it out, so I can't show it to you. But Rare Bird, the first Rare Bird album.
Oh,
That's Graham Fields and also the other keyboard player is David Caffinetti, who basically doubled as the keyboardist on Spinal Tap. So he moved onward and upward, as you can see. But that first Rare Bird album is absolutely magnificent as far as I'm concerned. There's a great performance of them live doing the opening cut from that album called Beautiful Scarlet. You can actually look it up on YouTube. They have the original band playing it with Graham Field on organ. And what's his name? Steve Gould, basically the bass player and vocals. Mark Ashton, I think, was basically the drummer. But yeah, very, very proto prog. Right at the beginning, they got right at. As a matter of fact, they said that when Genesis used to see these guys, they almost gave up because they thought that these guys were so good they'd never match them. Unfortunately, they broke up after their second album. That was the classic lineup. After that, there's a bunch of albums where they're kind of all over the place. But that first Rare Bird album is excellent. Highly recommended.
The black cover with the circular kind of.
It looks like an old painting. Like it's got like this. It looks almost like kind of like sort of like what I compare it to. It's got this. It does have a strange bird on it, but it looks like it might have been something that was painted like in the Middle Ages or something like that.
I always get that band confused with Rare Earth.
Yeah, no, there's no, it couldn't be more different. But yeah, look up Beautiful Scarlet, Rare Bird online. They were a great band, and there's a really good performance of it online.
Yeah, that's a great tune.
Yeah.
I had a digital copy of that until my dog ate my external hard drive. I've lost.
That's a curious appetite your dog has there, Frank.
Does he have a USB connection at least?
Huh?
Does your dog have a USB connection?
No, no. It's kind of direct.
He does, but he doesn't know he does.
Yeah, like ate the case. I never did find the case, and I tried taking it in and getting, it just won't read. It's going to cost me hundreds of dollars. Sad part is I've got tons of vinyl that I've ripped that I don't have anymore. One of these days. Okay, Graeg.
All right. Now this one, I guess a lot of prog people are probably going to know this one, but and this band put out a lot of albums, but I picked this one in particular. This is Soft Machine, and this is the album called Bundles, which would have been about 75 or thereabouts. Bundles by Soft Machine. So Soft Machine, for those of you who don't know that band, started about 6 or 7 years before this album, and was pretty much considered a jazz quartet, and eventually morphed into more of a fusion outing by the time it got to the mid-70s. And this in particular interest to prog fans, for fans of Alan Holdsworth, because this is the first place that I know of hearing Alan Holdsworth play. Everybody knows him from UK later and Bill Bruford Band, but this was the start for him. I think the first record. Well, there might have been another project he might have done before this, but this was the first kind of high-profile project, especially a band like Soft Machine was so well known. But they kind of gave it. I'm sorry.
Wasn't Andy Summers with him for a while too? Actually, did he follow once?
Maybe a little, maybe later.
Yeah.
Maybe later. Yeah, later in the 70s, perhaps. Yeah, but there was other people that came and went. Alan Holdsworth was only in there for a brief time, so they kept bringing in other guitar players later,
sure,
out of necessity. But they were really nice to him and pretty much gave him the first side of the album. The first side of the album is a 5-part suite called Hazard Profile. And a good portion of it is just Alan just reaming on the guitar. So, and that was the first time a lot of people, including me, kind of heard him play. So it was pretty astonishing. And they closed out that first side with a short, like a 1-minute acoustic guitar piece. And you don't hear Alan Holdsworth play much acoustic guitar. So that was pretty interesting. In the early days, he would sometimes go to the acoustic. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's as breathtaking as what he does on an electric guitar. And the band itself, this now had still Carl Jenkins, who was one of the original members. I think this might have been his last album with them. So the lineups were starting to change at this point. But progressive music fans, especially fans of UK or Bill Bruford Band or just Alan Holdsworth in general, if you don't know this was the sort of the beginning. So. Did you
see them when they toured Bruford's band, when it was Dave Stewart, Alan Holdsworth, Jeff Berlin, and Bruford Band? Did you see them?
No, I mean I saw Holdsworth with UK, but I don't think the Bruford Band ever played with Holdsworth in the United States that I know.
They did actually. We saw them. We saw them at the bottom line.
Okay.
Yeah, Maggie and I actually went there because Maggie was actually, she was going to NYU. She was actually going for her master's basically, and I went to pick her up. We had a bite to eat, and we went to just to check and see who's going to be playing. And it turned out it was going to be Bruford's band, so we went and saw them.
Yeah, and he was only there briefly, and then he was gone, and they got the other guy. I can't remember his name now. John somebody. Right?
John Clark, the unknown.
Yeah, John Clark. Yeah, the unknown John Clark took over. But Bundles is the name of the album, so if anybody doesn't know that one, the closing piece is perhaps the most beautiful part of the album, called The Floating World. So that's a standout track. They chose to close the album with that. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful flute, incredible keyboards, very minimalist, gorgeous stuff. So it starts out rocking, but it ends ethereal. Great album.
It was 1975.
75.
By the way, are you familiar with Alan's earlier work with Tempest?
Yes.
John Heisman Band?
Yeah, right. So that's, I mean, there was a couple other things, and violin too, yeah.
His violin on there is really quite impressive, and it sounds almost like the way he plays guitar.
Yeah, and he has one cut, I think, on the first IOU album, his first official Alan Holdsworth album has violin, at least on one cut there too, and also on the one he did for the jazz label, that early album that he Velvet Darkness, which he later on just disavowed that album.
Was it
violin on there
CTI?
too.
I forget. Maybe was that on CTI?
Yeah, CTI. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Reed Taylor, right? Was in yeah.
yeah.
CTI, Velvet Darkness, but he hated the recording itself. I think he didn't want it released, and I don't even know if you can still get that one, but that was some early stuff. Yeah, really
Cool.
good. Another lost soul there. You know, miss him. Great player.
Okay, Mark.
Okay, this is what are we on? Number 3 of the
Yes.
5?
You know?
I'm saving my special bullet for later. This one is I'm gonna springboard off of Henry's mentioning of Jellyfish, and I'm gonna recommend Licorice Quartet, which is basically 3 of the Jellyfish members, specifically Roger Joseph Manning Jr., Eric Dover, and Tim Smith. They kind of, and I guess is everybody except Andy Sturmer, who's probably the only other important member. I mean, they're all important, but Andy Sturmer being a key part of the original lineup of Jellyfish, he was not part of the Licorice Quartet. But this is a fairly recent release within the past few years or so. Again, you know, as Henry had said, really great compositions. Some of it's power poppy, but you know, it's more than that. It really is. It's, you know, the compositions are just you know, high quality, and again, that kind of California-ish vibe and theme, and they all write. You know, you can kind of tell, you know, Roger's writing style versus Eric's writing style versus Tim's. Tim Smith is a bass player. Eric Dover is guitar. I think I can't remember exactly 100%, but I think Eric Dover. I know Lyle Workman was on Spilt Milk, but I don't remember if Eric Dover was on that Spilt Milk album or if he came in later to fill in for like live and stuff like that.
When did Faulkner leave? Mark, was that after the first album?
Yeah, he was only on the first album, I think. So, and then when they did Spilt Milk, Lyle came in, did some work, and I don't like I said, I'd have to check the liner notes and everything if Eric was on that album too. But again, Licorice Quartet, check them out. It's if you really like Jellyfish and you're really upset that Jellyfish is not a thing anymore, or they don't come back, you know, as a full, you know, reunion or anything. Licorice Quartet is the next best thing. So that's my number 3.
Alan.
Okay, actually, you saw me probably leave and come back because I made a last minute change. And something just occurred to me, is something that I don't know, something in the conversation just made me think of this one. Some people probably have, but I think a vast majority of prog fans probably don't have it or don't know how good it is. And it's one of my favorite albums of all time. And it's also the title track was one of my mom's favorite tunes. We used to listen to a lot of prog music together, usually while playing Scrabble or while I would challenge her to guess the country that the music was from. I'd put on a CD, I'd bring up my new stash, and so I'd play the game with her, usually while we were playing Scrabble, like, what country is this from? But this song was so good that we actually had to play it twice in a row one time. And it's by the keyboardist, one of the keyboardists from Happy the Man, solo project, Kit Watkins Labyrinth. I decided to take it out of the case. I do have the original vinyl, but since I made a last minute change, I couldn't get the vinyl version too. But it's a phenomenal album to me, really just as good as the Happy the Man albums. And in some ways, almost better, but not as good at the same time in a way. But there's something just really special about it. And just for the title track alone, it's just like you gotta at least hear it.
Yeah, Kit Watkins put out some good stuff. Then you do with something with Coco.
Roussel.
Roussel,
So
the drummer.
yeah. Okay.
He was in Happy Man as drummer for a while.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of a tight little knit group there. So my third one is I had stumbled on this on YouTube or something a long time ago, and finally, and it wasn't available. Finally, I found it available. And the band is Atlas and Blåvardag. I believe they're Swedish. And I like the packaging. This is again like Trilogy. It's instrumental. 1979. Lots of keyboard. 2 keyboard players, guitar, bass, and drums. Again, in the line of ELP or Trilogy, or is it actually a nice companion piece to Trilogy? All instrumental. Very well. The musicianship is excellent. It's a nice recording, and it is different. It's their own music. They didn't copy anybody. But definitely a great, again, instrumental, progressive listen.
What year, Frank?
It was 1979. So, things were changing. This stuff was going away. Like Trilogy was 1980. So, yeah.
So that's an interesting pick for me because I mean I've known about that album for a while since it was first reissued on CD, coincidentally on a label that was interested in Advent at the time, Ad Perpetuum Memoriam, I think it was called. That was the initial CD release. I think they ended up folding, but I became friendly with the keyboard player, and I actually saw Atlas perform live in Sweden back at the Gorg there. They were the guest band.
Wow.
And I was the first person to apparently ever have them autograph one of their albums. But it was the CD. I didn't have the original vinyl, but I have a signed copy. All of them signed it, and they put on a phenomenal live show. They were great live. I think they did at least 1 or 2 other reunion shows. I guess that would have been, is it 2017, I think. I'll have to double check. Again, my memory's not what it used to be, but it was when Gorg was in Sweden, the little island of Van. So
That would have been cool.
Very cool.
All right, let's see. Mark.
I went already.
Oh, you did? Am I losing track? Am I losing my
Well,
brain?
we're on number 4.
Oh, we're on number 4? Oh, sorry.
Starting number 4, I think,
I
right?
guess I'm losing track.
Everyone did 3, right?
Yeah, everyone did 3, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next pick is from 2013, I'm going to say. Again, another jazz rocky kind of thing. Little, a lot of different styles of music kind of infused in this one as well. And I don't know too much about the band, unfortunately, but I'm sure Alan could probably fill in the details from of whatever I'm lacking. But all I know is that Michael League is the leader of the band, and the album is called the band is called Snarky Puppy, and this one is called We Like It Here. It's a fantastic CD. I think it's a live, recorded live, is it?
Yeah, live in the studio with an audience.
Yeah, with an audience, and I think for some reason they had trouble with a drummer that couldn't make it or something like that. They said they tend to have a rather large roster of musicians that play with them. And on this one, I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's like it's more than 15 people here, listed as musicians that are playing. I don't know if they're all playing together all the time, but the drummer, one of the drummers, was not able to make the gig, and they had another guy come in at the last minute, a gentleman by the name of Larnell Lewis, who he literally had to learn. I don't know if it was like overnight or a couple of nights or something like that. He had to step in and learn the stuff on the plane on the way over to the gig, and there's video of it on YouTube, and you can, if you look up the Snarky Puppy and the cuts, either Lingus or What About Me, two fantastic cuts. And this guy just like nailed. Like the drummer was just blew my mind, and I think another standout musician on here is Corey Henry, who's a fantastic keyboardist. I highly recommend that one. But that's as much as I know about Snarky Puppy. I'm sure they have other great stuff. I just haven't dug into their full catalog yet. So.
That's my favorite one as well, by the way. And it also has, I mean, that the Lingus, Corey Henry solo on Lingus has become like world famous, and it's sort of like from a fusion synthesizer solo perspective, I don't know if anything has been that famous. And I forget the other keyboardist's name, but his reaction while it's happening live.
Yeah.
It's just,
I think who you're referring to is, what's his name? Where's the keyboards? Maybe Sean Martin?
Yeah, I think you're right. Sean Martin. Yeah. Who's a great keyboard player too.
Yeah.
But for an entirely improvised solo, I mean, it was like the most exciting, synthesizer solo or keyboard solo I've heard in a fusion context since Chick Corea in his prime, I'd say.
Yeah, and like two hands just going nuts, unbelievable. Henry, have you seen that video?
I don't remember. He just probably showed it to me. I probably seen it, but I don't remember.
Yeah, you got to refresh your memory on that. That's really that's up there. That's like this guy is no joke, But yeah, okay, next.
Cool. Great.
Look. All right. Well, this next one, boy, I debated whether I was going to include this one because it's such a divisive band. But of all the sort of classic prog bands, well-known bands, this is the one that a lot of prog fans actually hate. And my choice for this band, Henry Cow, is their album In Praise of Learning. Let's get this back a little bit because actually I have vinyl here, so hopefully you can get it all in. So I'm assuming you guys at least tangentially know who Henry Cow is, if not familiar with some of their work. But anyway, they generated the category of prog we know as RIO. So largely a totally improvising band in the early days. By the time this album came up, In Praise of Learning, they had merged with a trio of musicians known as Slap Happy. Slap Happy were sort of this sort of avant-garde pop trio fronted by a woman named Dagmar Krause. And Dagmar Krause has probably the most distinctive, wonderful voice you're ever likely to hear. Although I've been known to put this album on for prog fans and have them run screaming out of the room. So that's what I mean by divisive. You would, if you found somebody that said, I heard about Henry Cow and I'm afraid I don't know where to go. I don't really want to. I don't want to take a chance. Steer them to In Praise of Learning because at least we've got vocals this time. And one of their biggest, so most of this stuff was improvised largely in the early days, but they did a lot of really complex through composed music. And the one on this one called Living in the Heart of the Beast became their magnum opus. It's sort of like Supper's Ready to Genesis, it's that kind of thing. Brilliant piece of music, very little improvising at all in it. And the brilliant guitar playing of Fred Frith really gets to show his skills playing guitar on it. Great band. A lot of people came and went. They changed a lot of partners with National Health. So people like, for instance, John Greaves was originally a bass player in Henry Cow, went on to National Health afterwards. So there's been various people who have come and gone. Some of the later players like the cellist and bass player Georgie Bourne. So, and that was the other thing about Henry Cow. At this point in the band, they were 6 pieces, 3 men and 3 women. Very rare for,
Very
you know,
rare.
maybe we got Annie Hasselman Renaissance, but rare for women in prog bands, especially high profile ones, and rarer still to have half the band female, half male. Plus the way they lived, they were sort of like almost like a hippie commune. They lived together, they traveled together, they traveled in a van, the wives cooked food, the kids went with them. They lived out on the road when they had to, and they made their music, and they played to very, very small audiences, needless to say. But brilliant stuff. If you want to take a chance, you might want to take them in small doses, but in praise of learning, highly recommended.
Yeah, Rio or opposition can just scare the heck out of people.
Yeah.
You got to be ready to listen to it.
You do.
It's scary.
Take a chance on that one, though.
Yeah, I've been wanting to listen to in Cal, but
You know what? Before we get off of this album, you can actually just go to the one cut, and if you can't stand the one cut, you probably can do away the rest of the album. It opens with a track that's called War, and it's only about 3 minutes long, but it's the most brilliant 3 minutes of music you ever heard. The rhythmic complexity of this piece is unbelievable. It just added rhythms, all kinds of stuff going on, bizarre trumpet solos, and Dagmar Krause singing. You never heard anything like it. So check that one out. War. It's the name of the cut.
Dagmar Krause.
Dagmar Krause. Anything by
What a great name.
Dagmar Krause. Wonderful, wonderful. She's she's getting up there in age, but you can still find videos of her doing things now. In fact, that original Slap Happy trio with Peter Blegvad and I think of who the guy was, Anthony Moore. They sometimes do reunions and do things, but never over here. Usually in Europe somewhere. Occasionally they'll get together and do some stuff. The same thing with the other members of Henry Cow. Every once in a while they'll get together in various forms and play together. I saw like 4 of them play together in New York once, and the fact that the band was largely improvised anyway, it didn't matter. They didn't even have to get back to old repertoire. They could say, "Let's get together and play," and they get together and they sit down and they play.
Yeah, it's awesome.